Our home death care and death industry has changed dramatically in the last 60, 70 years. So we gathered as a family, and I said, this is something I would like for us to consider doing and creating, a home cemetery, and if we can have a, home death care. My father, Chris Judd, died in 2015 at age 72. My name's Michael Judd. I live here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains of Maryland. We have about 25 acres of mixed woods, and the open areas we've planted with food forests, a mix of fruit and nut trees. We live in harmony with this place, what we kind of call, full circle, where we give back what we're taking. My son, Wyatt, was born in September, end of September, at home. 2 weeks later, my father was diagnosed with mesothelioma, pretty advanced. I kind of jumped forward to death at that moment, feeling it completely. And my father was calm and saying, there's time. It was about an 18-month illness that gave us a lot of time to plan and think about what we wanted as a family, not what necessarily just he wanted, what was going to be good for all of us in the process of him dying. How would it take place? How would we care for him? And could we do it here on our land? And my father, being an open, generous soul, worked with us in his illness and with us to prepare his burial, his death and his burial. And that was a real gift. My father did say that the last year of his life was one of the best he ever had. Even though he was struggling in illness, it was a gift to all of us how he showed a way through death and dying, how it can be done with grace and beauty and support to others. Even in his dying, he was helping us deal with it. At a certain point, we brought in hospice a couple of months before he died. And one of the first stages with hospice was an information sheet about resources. And at the back of that sheet, at the very bottom, there was one mention for natural home burial. So we gathered as a family, and I said, this is something I would like for us to consider doing and creating, a home cemetery, and if we can have a, home death care. And everybody was supportive. That was key, of course, to have a family unit that was on board with it. And my father too, he was there, he was part of the decision making. And that started the process of beginning to check with the county. So I called up the county health department and I said, we would like to begin the process of doing a home burial. The immediate response was, I don't know if we can do that. Let me check. So I waited, knowing that we could, but this has not been a process that's been done, often in the last 30 years. So when the health department gets back to me, yes, you can do that. We'll send out, a health department agent. Health department agent comes out, says, where are you thinking about doing this on your property? I show them. They measure from the spot to the well. It's more than 100 feet, fine. It's more than 100 feet from a floodplain or a stream, fine. You're good. And we also designed it together. Began a small clearing in our woods, got stone, did stone terraces, created a stone walkway. We did this with my father. He was part of it. He paid for the stones. We did the design and we got it all ready together. So culturally here in the U.S., our home death care and death industry has changed dramatically in the last 60, 70 years, where previously home death care was the norm. Being buried at home or on the farm in the rural areas was the norm. Community gathering and support were the norm. There was comfort and acceptance around death. Children were part of the process. There was not fear, there was gathering, there was love, support, even celebration. We had a hospice bed in our living room. We were all there, we were all gathered for the days leading up. It was actually a wonderful time. His death actually created a lot of community. It brought our family together closer than it had been. We spent more time together around him dying than we had at any other time. And of course, he shone through the whole thing, even though he was in pain, and that was a beauty to see. People actually were really drawn to come see him in this stage of dying, yet shining, right? So much was given in his passing. He died early in the morning, and my sister was with him. I was upstairs sleeping. We were taking turns being with him. And she came up and got me, got my mother, and we all went down together. And yeah, he'd passed. Rose Ma, our death doula, came with her son to help us. We were there as a family, but even though we had done some reading and preparing and talking, we were a little frozen. Rose Ma was a guide that helped us have confidence in understanding that this is not necessarily that complicated. She and her son came, and we helped clean my father and dress my father. Some of us wanted to do that. Some of us, wanted to go dig the grave. Some wanted to go make food. It was kind of interesting to see who wanted to do what. And since there were different things to do, there was opportunity. There was process. And we began setting up candles. We got rose water. We put up pictures of my father and other loved ones, his brother who had passed. We created just a very simple but, meaningful space. Some people continued to dig the grave themselves. There was really no dictates on the grave digging. Nobody had come out. Nobody had said, you got to do it this way. So it was our own process. Dig as much as you want. We went about 4 feet deep. And, that was good for those who went out there and dug. It gave them something to do and to do together. Friday night, we said we're going to, invite people over. Come see and say goodbye. And we had a house full. It was a party. Unintended. All these loved ones came. All these friends came. And we do have some Irish in us, so there was whiskey and there was a wake without it being a planned or understood. It's not nothing we'd done before, or most of the people who had come had never really been part of a wake like this. An informal wake, but it was a gathering, and all the people got to see, and my father was still there. They could come and give their honor and love, say goodbye in that space, support us as a family. It was a beautiful night. It was very special. It was very supportive. It was very helpful to us, and we didn't realize that it would be so. And then Saturday was the third day, and yes, he'd gone by then. We gathered our family, immediate family, and it was only us. We didn't have a minister. We didn't have a guide. We are a strong family, so we decided we could do this ourselves. And we gathered in a big circle around my father, and we took turns sharing stories about my father. How had he touched our lives? And that was beautiful. For us and for him, honoring him with how he, meant something to us. Then we took him we created a board, very simple board, 12-inch wide board with a couple of 2x2s underneath it. We placed him on that, and we took silk fabric that was left over from making my sister's wedding dress 25 years before, and we wrapped him, his body, and the board together. And 4 of us carried his body out of the house in a quiet procession of the family following us up to our home cemetery a couple 100 feet away. And we lowered him with ropes. Again, we stood together. My mother read a poem. It was not easy to do, but it was beautiful. And doing it in a way that was just us, felt very real, very caring. And again, anyone who wanted to had a chance to say last loving words, whatever they were called to do. And then we, who wanted to, slowly started filling the grave in, which was not easy either. It was not easy, but beautiful. And I didn't want to leave. So I made a fire pit. I brought out some straw bales, and I made a fire pit next to my father's grave. And I would say 5 or 6 of us stayed there. We were drinking whiskey and remembering Dad and telling stories and just staying close and just being more in process, not wanting, for this to go too quickly. Any time spent around this was so helpful. There was so much to process. So much was coming out, even all that we were doing. And I needed every opportunity I could get. It helped me. It helped all of us a lot. We've had 2 of our children at home. We've done home births. And in reflection of doing a home birth and looking at birth in our culture, where there's a lot of preparation, this door into life has a lot of support and care, right? The other door we all go through is dying. It's inevitable, and it's an important door. It's a transition as well. And having cared for my father and then my grandmother following him in home burial, home death care and home burial, you realize the importance of holding your loved ones in that space. It is challenging for them. It's challenging for everybody. And it needs to be held in a space of love and caring. And it is a transition that needs preparing for, thought about, conversation about, planning for, family and community support around. Not something you want to do in isolation or as a last-minute consideration. It really does need that same amount of care and thought and support as birth does.